Welcome, guys, to another episode of the Sports Card Podcast. I'm Pang Ming, your host, the Card Boss. Today, I got a friend who I met in the Hong Kong Card Show last year, Eric, and he's here to share some interesting stories, I hope. Hi, Eric. How you doing, man?
Good. Hopefully, the stories and content I can provide is actually good content. So we'll see. I mean, it's good to catch up again with you. I think, as mentioned, we met during the Hong Kong Card Show. I think we worked out a trade. We can talk about that later. I think you did very well on that trade. Hopefully, my side can
I like it.
can
I
catch up
like
a
it.
little bit. Can catch up a little bit, so we can cover that.
Yeah.
Uh,
So maybe before we talk about cards, right? Just share with the audience a bit who you are. Who's Eric?
Yeah. So I'm based in Hong Kong. I was born here, but grew up mainly in Canada. And then, after graduation, decided to move back to Hong Kong to, I guess, explore the roots and also, the job market here. And lo and behold, I've been here for the last 20 years. It's hard to uproot myself and go back to Canada now. So
Okay.
I guess even though I have family, mainly my brother and a lot of cousins that are back there, my life is based here. So, I pretty much starting about 5 years ago, started working for myself, doing stocks as well as on the property side. And so it's given me the freedom as well as the time to explore this great little hobby of ours.
And have you been collecting for a long time already?
So the journey into, I guess, cards was probably in Canada when I first moved over. So I was eight, nine when we first immigrated. I think I started, this is Canada. Ice hockey is
Right.
the card market there, right?
That's right.
Probably still about 95% ice hockey up there.
Right.
And so, it was, followed the local team, the Vancouver Canucks, and obviously kids over there have hockey cards, which I, started exploring as well. Remember as a kid being very excited, just getting hands on any cards and opening
All right.
packs.
What year
Even
was this?
though this would be 1990, 91. It's pretty much that junk stuff. I
Yep.
think hockey was pro set, and obviously, I still have some in my old binders back in Vancouver, but I don't think they're worth anything. Even if they were in fabulous condition and graded, I don't think they're worth that much.
Right.
And then obviously, I think fell out of the cards for a while, like during high school as well as university.
As most of it.
Yeah, I think it's a common theme and common story among, I guess, guys my age, maybe your age as well.
I have a hunch we're about the same age though. So because I started
Probably.
around the same time as well.
Yeah, so maybe let's not explore how old we are quite yet.
Right.
Yeah, and then I guess it was it would have been 2018 or so that I got back into the hobby in Hong Kong. I think it was actually, hockey brought me back into it. It was at that time, I think, the Canucks, were going through years where they were really bad.
Right.
And then they drafted a new rookie, Brock Besser, who I thought was quite exciting. And that kind of got me back interested into looking for cards. And so just, going online and looking for stores in Hong Kong.
Right.
Yeah. And then from there, I guess that branched into, the Zion year, the hype from the Zion year, the Zion products. And and now I dabble in pretty much, all the sports. So basketball, basketball is huge, American football, as well as F1 as well. That's the quick story of, I guess, how I got into the hobby and how I got back into the hobby.
Nice. I guess if you're saying that you got back into the hobby in 2018 and hockey was the first thing that you went back, I'm pretty sure it's quite difficult to locate hockey cards in Hong Kong, right? So everything's got to be through eBay, I would assume.
So eBay was a big thing, but actually a lot of the stores carry hockey here. I think the local card store that first, it's about 10, 15 minutes away from home. They had a lot of hockey products, the whole wide range, and then they also had a lot of Connor McDavid. So if you know Connor McDavid, I guess
I do.
he's like the
Yes, I
Luka
do.
Doncic of I guess hockey, right?
Right.
They had a lot of that. And so I think later on we can go into the story of actually how I managed to pull one of the Grail kind of McDavid cards from my local card store.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
So, but I guess looking back at 2018, when I first got back into the hobby, it should have been basketball that I got into. because that was Don's itch year. And that was, I think, when pricing of stuff like Prism, NTM Flawless is quite cheap compared to what we see now for those similar
Correct.
products with
Correct.
lesser rookie
Well,
classes.
that was a crazy time to be in. So for me, I got back into the hobby. Like I was started around your time as well, but I was into basketball in the early 90s. Okay. And then I stopped collecting basketball cards to focus on Magic the Gathering. And I played professionally for 20 years. Okay.
Right.
I kind of stopped just right before the pandemic at around 2018. Okay. Just to like take a break from the game. And I got into basketball cards like roughly around your time, like early 2019. It was already past Luka's year, heading into Zion's year as well. And
Yeah.
I guess maybe both of us were looking at the same sort of trend lines, where the hobby was started to go quite out of control. Right? You're having the base prism, Luka PSA 10s going for hundreds or maybe even $1,000. I believe at one point, right? Just the base prism PSA
Um,
10s.
I don't exactly remember the base Prism
Yep.
how much it went up to, but I think the silvers at one point got up to at least 10,000, right?
Yeah,
US
it was
dollars.
more. I think it was more because I remember seeing some videos back then
Yeah.
saying that they were very happy to buy the base prisms at $7,000, which was like
Yeah.
a deal back then. So
I
how
mean, I think that
different?
was back in the day when everybody rushed to create their base cards, right? So,
Correct.
I'm sure anybody can look at the population, PSA
Right.
population report of Zion Prism base, right? And I
Right.
think when you got it back, you were just counting it as, wow, this is like, I don't know, two, three hundred
X or
dollars or
X
five
or
hundred
whatever, right?
dollars a card, right? And look, I
Yeah.
50 of them, I'm rich. Unfortunately, I didn't sell many of them, so I think I'm still sitting on a stack of them. But yeah,
Really?
those were crazy days.
Yeah. Let's talk a bit about stores in Hong Kong. Like, I do know that Hong Kong has quite a number of stores actually, and I guess
Yep.
even more today. Just dialing back to 2018, you were saying that there were already quite a number of established stores in Hong
Mm,
Kong. So
mm,
when the craze was starting to to sizzle a little bit, were all
yep.
these stores very active already? Like were there a lot of people in these stores like just buying up products and things like that?
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I've gotten to know kind of some of the owners, and then obviously kind of the how they evolved in terms of the card store industry here. I think the main thing was like back in the 90s, the junk wax era. Like I think there is a mall in Hong Kong called Ally Plaza in Prince
Okay.
Edward.
Okay.
It's still there, so it's basically three floors.
Yep.
And I think there was an entire floor that was dedicated to cards. And people used
Wow.
to, I hear from kind of the vets of the Hong Kong card industry that, people used to go open their cards and there'll be like an alleyway where all the trades would be happening. And then obviously, when the hype went out of the market, a lot of these stores closed.
Right.
So I think the ones that I went to in 2018 were actually the old stores, the old owners that decided to, um, keep their businesses going even during the
Right.
tough times.
Nice.
So there's one in Wan Chai called Flash Shop. There
Mhm.
were a couple in Ally Plaza, I think Car 23, as well as Ricky's. So those were the three that I generally frequented. And as you mentioned, there are obviously a couple other ones.
Yep.
Some were focused not just on sports, like there's TCG, Pokemon.
Correct.
And then after that, these recent years after the boom, there's several other ones that have gotten bigger and quite a good
Mm.
following.
I had a chance to visit a couple of shops when I was in Hong Kong
Yeah,
last year, or was it 2 years ago? I went to Home Run, that's in Prince
yeah,
Edward as well,
yeah,
right? So they do TCG as well as basketball. And
yeah.
I can't remember the owner's name, but I guess he's pretty veteran in the hobby as well, correct?
Yeah, so Home Run is Jim. Jim's a great guy.
That's right, Jim. Yep.
And yeah, he was involved in the card market back in the 90s. I think he had his
Right.
own store as well.
Yep.
Then he closed it, but I think he kept being in touch with the card market or the card industry throughout the times. And then I believe he opened Home Run about probably 3, 4 years ago.
Right.
And I think, yeah, there's TCG, and I think they do, what is it? Fire and Blood, right? That is
Flesh
it
and blood.
blood, Flesh and
Flesh and
Blood,
blood.
yes. So
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, I'm not a big, yeah, Since you're a Magic guy, I think you know that
Yeah, I
part of
do.
it. Yeah.
And
So Home
the
Run is
other,
one of the stores, as well as I think SC is one of those stores. SC
that's right. So
Collectibles. Yeah.
SC Sports Card Hong Kong, that's with Joe and Anthony, right?
Yeah, I don't know those guys that well, but I mean, they are one of the kind of newcomers that are quite big. So their
Yep.
stores are a little bit different in terms of the size of their stores are a bit bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of areas that people can sit down and actually open cards. So the ones like in that I first went to in 2018, they're actually quite small stores, and you have to
Yeah, I
kind of
mean it's
stand there.
Hong Kong, right? So
Yeah, so rent was pretty high. I'm guessing because rent is lower now, that's why stores
yeah,
are bigger.
right.
But yeah, those original kind of what you call OG stores, they
Mm.
were actually quite small. Like standing room, you can fit maybe 4 or 5 guys at
Mm-hmm.
most. And yeah, that's how those stores were set up. It's definitely
Not huge
not the
ones.
most enjoyable experience.
Let's see.
I think
Hong
people get their
Kong.
joy from ripping the cards and seeing what comes out rather than the store experience, I would say.
Nice. That's right. I went to SC Hong Kong's old store. So it was also like what you described, like a pretty narrow but well-designed store. Like, it was we had some signed jerseys on the wall. It
Yeah.
looked very modern, right? And then I think last year they moved into a much bigger store, the one that you described, where they had a table to do breaks and for people to sit down and break open boxes, right? So I think that's the new store.
Yeah.
The size is, I guess, maybe is quite substantial as well.
Yeah, I mean, and then obviously nowadays, Card Hobby has also opened a store,
Right.
as well as Macau Local Man has also opened a store in Hong Kong. So, some of these more, I guess you'd say, bigger players are starting to enter the local card market by setting up physical stores as well.
And
Yeah.
is there a reason you think that why Hong Kong? Okay, before I mention that, in Malaysia we don't have a dedicated sports car store
Mm.
until today. Okay, we used to have it in the early 90s, when there was the boom back then,
Yeah.
but we don't have a dedicated sports car store today in Malaysia.
Mm.
All right. And in Singapore, there is a couple, but not many. And here we are discussing about Hong Kong, given the size of Hong Kong, and more and more stores are popping up, including the bigger brands like Card Hobby. So is the consumption, just local consumptions, growing tremendously in Hong Kong, that so many stores are sprouting up?
So I would say, I guess Hong Kong has historically been quite a well-off, wealthy place. And I think possibly that's a reason why there are quite a number of established stores. And I think in a way, the recent few years, basketball has taken off. Basketball cards have taken off tremendously in China. It's probably another story for another day, but physically getting the cards into China is a more difficult process than, say, into Hong Kong. Hong Kong had more established relations with the likes of Panini and Topps, so they were able to get more products.
Yep.
And actually, over the past few years, a lot of the high-end products actually get funneled right up back to China, or
Right.
they're
Okay. That's
broken,
interesting.
or they get broken in Hong Kong and then shipped up to China. So
Interesting.
actually, um, one of the OG stores that I mentioned, I won't give their name. They took their allocation of basketball products from Panini, and they pretty much had it earmarked by one or two big the resellers that said, okay, we'll take up whatever product you get from them. You let us know the price, and then essentially we will
Just do a
make
back to
that
back.
profit margin and
Yeah.
bring it up to China. Actually, in recent years, it's been difficult getting products in Hong Kong, especially high-end stuff like Flawless, NT, and stuff, because
Because it just
all
gets
that is being
vacuumed to
all that
China.
is being soaked up by China.
Right.
Yeah.
Understand. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I buy from Card Hobby as well, and I can see the immense sheer volume of cards, modern stuff especially, that just pops up on Card Hobby, right? And that tells you the amount of product that, they consume.
Yeah, I mean, you were also talking about card shows. Card shows is something that's kind of, I guess, you're seeing more in Asia as well as in Hong
Yes.
Kong. Like Hong Kong has
Yes.
done a couple big ones, but
Yes.
then, like in China, there is actually pretty much card show every week. I mean, of varying sizes, but I think they generally put on a decent sized card show every month or so.
Right.
So
Right.
that just shows you kind of the amount of interest as well as money that's in the hobby up there.
Got it. Got it. And I mean, of course, what we can see in Hong Kong is what you mentioned, right? The hobby is growing not only domestically, but because of China's influence as well. How about kids? Do you have a big kid space collectors in Hong Kong?
I mean, you do see kids go into shops here and there, but I think this is probably a common issue with a lot of places is that sports cards is increasingly being
Expensive.
priced out of kids' price range.
Right.
Um, and yeah, I'm sure the card companies are thinking of many ways on how to approach it and how to get more kids involved. But essentially, a pack of Prism, I think that will set back a kid several weeks or several months of allowance, right? So
Right.
so unless they have really wealthy parents, or if they're doing super well on grades, it's not
They get rewarded accordingly.
it's not a super affordable hobby for kids at the moment.
Got it.
Which I think that's why stuff like Pokemon does a bit better, among
Right,
the
right.
younger. Yeah.
Well, the reason why I brought this up was when I was in Hong Kong in the show last year, right? So I set up in Hong Kong and I had two sets of kids that came to my table. So the first one that came with the parents, okay, and he had a little box and he asked me whether was I interested in any of his cards. I said, yep, sure, And he flipped open a number of Stephen Curry's autograph cards. Now, they were not flawless. I mean, they were like medium tier, maybe contenders, thick, and stuff like that. But easily these were like $1,000 cards each. Okay, so for me, it's like the kid's probably about maybe 12, 13. Okay. So I was a bit amazed. Of course, it's not like the kids, the ones that, shell out the money is perhaps supported by the parents, but it's interesting to find parents being so supportive of, the kid, in the hobby, literally holding a couple $1,000s of cards, in a little lunchbox.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely when I was 12 and 13, I wasn't flashing those cards.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. I think there are some kids, like we were at the same show. I think some kids also came up to my table with those as well. I think you also see that in the U.S. I think the U.S. there are a lot of kids that. Well, what's interesting is that I recently this year in was it February or March, I went to Dallas for the Dallas Card Show, and they have full-time high school kids that are 17, 18 that quit school or are not going to school anymore that do the professional, I guess, card flipping for a living, and they're making like six figures US dollars, right? So it's something
Amazing.
that there are a number of these guys that I met that do that. And obviously, like you said, there was some kid that came up, bought a nice Bobby Witt from me. It was a Bobby Witt Bowman Bowman First Auto, and it was about a $7,000 card. And he was with his dad. He came, thought about the card, came back an hour later, counted out the $100 bills, and bought the card. So yeah, I mean, I think these guys either they're definitely supported by their parents, but maybe they also, have some jobs on the side where they earn some money as well. But definitely I wasn't doing that when I was 12.
For sure, man. I mean, I did a little bit of business when I was younger, but not to that kind of scale. Okay, the other example I wanted to share was another kid, a Hong Kong kid. Okay, came out to my table as well, and he had a little box, and he showed me a couple of cards. I said, these are stuff I'm not interested in. And then I caught sight of another special case, the ones that you could hold just one card inside there. So I was just a bit curious, what do you have in there? So he flipped it open, and he showed me an NTSGA, okay, RPA out of 99, which is BGS 9. Okay. And this kid is probably about like 14, 15, around there. Okay. He's on his own. I said, how do you get this? Right. This is at that time. Okay. Well, this was December last year, right? SG cards were still going upward, but not where it is right now.
I think that's still probably a $25,000 card.
I think back then was about like 15 to 18.
20, right?
15, around there. So I was a bit curious, right? I was asking the kids, like, how did you get this card? It's like, this card is beyond your age, right? So he said that, oh, I flip Pokemon cards. So he flipped Pokemon cards and decided to just put all his earnings into an SGA, right? And I said, cool, man. It's like, that's a cool thing to do. Then I asked him, right, would you be interested in selling it? And I said, nah, I'm just going to hold it until he wins MVP. And this was in December. Right? So I was just saying, all right. So what do you expect, when he wins MVP? I said, maybe it's going to worth about like 40K. And it's like, today we're sitting at the end of the season, playoffs, right? It's a 40K card today.
Yeah, we should probably take more advice from that kid.
Exactly, man. Like,
Honestly, seems like he knows what he's doing, right? Because I mean,
exactly. So again, that's why I'm not sure whether is it because, to be honest, the hobby for kids at that age, it's not developed here in Malaysia. Like kids at that age in Malaysia is probably still playing video games, okay, or playing games on their tablets, right? They're not out there flipping cards, doing some sort of business, earning some side hustle. They're not doing any of that, let alone managing a 15 or in that case, $18,000 investment to making it 2x in like four months.
yeah, I
So
mean, yeah, it could be that Hong Kong is just, I guess, well, in Hong Kong, you're much more dialed into money from a young age. I think probably
right.
has to do with, turn on the radio, it's probably talking about stocks or the stock market half the time, right? So I think that's very different from elsewhere. Like, as I mentioned, like I grew up in Canada. Outside of days where the market really dropped or really went up a lot, you don't really hear about it. But here in Hong Kong, you turn on the radio, you turn on the news,
It's the finance
there's always a
business.
segment about stocks. And so maybe I think that's possibly why, some of these kids are so dialed in from the beginning, like
Interesting.
in terms of, the monetary value of this hobby and how to kind of make money from it. So
Interesting.
I think
Yeah.
that's probably maybe somewhat in the genetics or the DNA of Hong Kong people.
That's amazing. So let's talk a bit. You mentioned that you went to Dallas. Was that specifically just for the show?
Yeah, so I was traveling back to Vancouver for personal reasons, and then during my card journey, obviously, I've met some guys from the U.S. and he's always one of the guys has always been talking how good the Dallas card show was, and it just linked up well in terms of flight schedules and so on that I could pop down for the 3 days there.
Right.
And so going to a U.S. show was obviously kind of one of the things I wanted to do. I think obviously Nationals and Fanatics Fest going forward is stuff that will be the big ones. But, the likes of Burbank as well as Dallas put on decent card shows. And so it was a very good experience. I think quite a lot of money transactions in there. It's quite vibrant at that time. Obviously, this was Trump Liberation Day. So it'll be interesting to see how the card market is now.
Right.
I think seems like it's okay so far from eBay as well as kind of, I guess.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, as well as
Yeah.
kind of what you see on Alt and Fanatics, right? It seems
Yeah.
like stuff is still holding up okay, but obviously there's a time lag to stuff, right? So it'll be interesting to see where the card market is in the second half of this year.
Yeah, I think. I mean, we'll segue a bit on this topic, right? So I think that regardless of the Trump's policies on tariffs and things like that, domestic U.S. consumption for cards and pricing of cards, I think there's not going to be much changes because the people who can afford paying thousands of dollars for cards, right, are not worried about this. Worst case, they just sit back and relax, So all the while people are talking about, things are going to become more expensive. There may be a recession, or maybe we got to sell our cards, to put food on the table. I don't think that's ever going to happen, where you're going to have a huge fire sale of high-end cards, especially.
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw in a way that happened during the COVID, right? You would hopefully the hobby or the market participants in the hobby are much smarter and
Yes.
than back then, right?
Yep.
So I mean, I think back in the day there was I generally do agree on the high end part where high end buyers or the guys dealing in these kind of 5,000 plus or $10,000 cards. You're not splashing that if you're worried if you're living paycheck to paycheck. So I generally do agree, but there have been cases when guys over leverage too much, and I think one of the big collectors in the US was forced to fire sale quite a number of his high-end Lucas and modern cards back then.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. As people say, like when the market downturn comes, then you know who's swimming naked,
Yeah.
right? So I guess we'll see.
That's right. That's right. With shows, so you've been to Dallas, and of course, you have set up in Hong Kong. And I'm not sure what other shows that you have been. How's the, is there any learnings that, if you had a chance to tell the organizers for, let's say, the Hong Kong show that, what's different between that and of, let's say, a show in Dallas?
So I think I've been shows to Dallas, Hong Kong. I've been to a China one in Hangzhou that was pretty sizable, as well as the last couple Macau shows. I think Macau is obviously on a whole different level in terms of the size it is and kind of the
Yes.
cards that get brought up,
Yep.
especially by kind of everybody from the region, right? The Hong Kong show, I think, the Hong Kong show is quite amazing in terms of just how much activity there is. I think it has to do with the venue being a bit smaller, but in general, both of the shows that been, the aisles are packed.
Yes.
There's a lot of interest. There's a lot of guys looking for kind of everything, right? So, the Hong Kong environment, I think it's done very well. For Dallas, I think it's a mixture of there's a lot more different stuff. So there's vintage baseball, there's obviously modern stuff. But I think what's different from US as well as Asia is that there are a lot more, I guess, professionals or people who do this for a living that
Right.
go to the shows in Dallas. So
Right.
there are professional guys that are going around searching for deals that they can
Right.
then make money on, sending this card to a collector or a guy that they know that collects that parallel or that specific card. So I think Dallas is a little different from like Hong Kong because of that. And I think, yeah, we saw that in Macau for the second year. There was a lot more foreigners that came, and the foreigners that came, a big portion of those guys were actually these professional kind of flippers, right? So
Yep.
I kind of do like the Hong Kong show in terms of it's a very,
The vibe, maybe.
the vibe.
Yeah.
There are collectors, and then it's like it's not a lot of people that are doing it for a living. But then I guess one downside of I think Hong Kong show, well, as well as Macau, is that the stuff was priced crazily, right? So there were market comps and everything is pretty much 50% above market comps. So essentially, it becomes a staring contest between the buyer and the seller.
Correct, correct. I had an opportunity to go, like, of course, I went to the Hong Kong show. I'm going to touch on that.
Yeah.
I was in the Macau show the year before, so not last year, but the first ever Macau show. I guess it's brand new, so, a lot of things were still uncertain, but I was a bit disappointed in terms of the quality of the stuff that was there. As what you mentioned, right, people were pricing things way overpriced, not really interested to do any deals if you wanted to meet somewhere at least near comps, right? They wanted something above. Maybe they wanted to cover the cost of travel, or maybe the expectation was they could make a lot of money. I'm not sure. Okay, but kind of left a bit of a sour taste for me in the previous year, and that's why I didn't go back the second year. Okay, but as what you mentioned, right, the last year's one whereby you had more dealers coming in from all parts of the world, right, and it was more like a dealer to dealer kind of transactions happening as opposed to the general foot traffic, picking up cards here and there. So like you said, maybe the scale for Macau is much bigger. And whereas when you jump into Hong Kong, it's almost like the total opposite, whereby you get more of the general public, the general collectors who are interested to buy some stuff for the PC, looking at cards at reasonable prices. If you price your cards fair in Hong Kong, I think that you probably do extremely well, right?
Yeah. So I think like one thing I want to highlight is obviously Dallas and US, that's quite different from Asia, at least quite a lot of trades happening. So it's actually a lot of card for card or card for card plus cash, right?
Yep.
Which like in Asia, it's a bit less. And I think back to kind of being priced above comps, I think that's and you seeing that in Macau, I think that's a measure of actually what happens in the China market. In the as I mentioned, I went to the Hangzhou card show. It's the exact same thing. So I think a lot of those guys came down to Macau with that same kind of pricing strategy.
Right.
Like China collectors, it's quite a peculiar bunch, I would say, in terms of they
Right.
like to, there are guys that they focus on. So there'll be guys that collect just rockets or just certain players. Like,
Right.
I'm sure you met the guy that collects Jalen Green, right? So he
Yes.
corners the market on Jalen Green, or you
Yes. I
corner the
saw that one.
market on Benedict Mathurin. And then
Yes.
say you're really interested in a card, then you ask him for pricing, and it's just something astronomical, right? So
Right.
I think they tend to focus on one player and getting pretty much all the good cards of that one player.
Yep.
And potentially, if I ask some China guys what that strategy is, and it's potentially looking for that fish to offload that entire collection to eventually. Not entirely sure how that works or how you
It's
find that
odd,
fish.
right? It's
Yeah.
odd, but I guess maybe if let's say in that example, if Jalen Green was gonna be the next Luka, for example, in terms of
Yeah.
popularity, skill, and achievements and whatnot, he's probably set for life if that was the case, right?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to the guy. He says Jalen Green's the next Kobe. So if he pans out to be even 50 or 80% of Kobe, then I think he'll be set for life. Yeah.
It's a bit hard to say. So I guess with that, you travel quite a fair bit for shows, and it's something that's not very common. I think that most people in Asia, not referring to China, but talking about Southeast Asia, right? We don't travel as much to meet people, to do deals, and to attend shows. Only recently because of Macau and because of
Mm.
like the Hong Kong show, that we start to see people from the Philippines start to spread out a little bit.
Yeah.
So is this something that you continuously will see happening, more and more, that people are you're gonna, for example, if you were to last year's Hong Kong show, we had a bunch of Philippine vendors,
Yeah.
some vendors from Thailand as well. So do you expect, upcoming shows, whether it's in Macau or Hong Kong, the diversification of people from all different parts of the region, more and more people decide to travel to the shows. Do you see that happening?
I think so. I mean, I think Macau is probably the big one that people will migrate to from the region. I think generally, I agree with you in terms of pricing and the inability to kind of do deals at Macau. But I think people generally are quite impressed by kind of the amount of like modern local mans that are in Macau, right? As well as I think a couple of the big Filipino collectors bring up some of their mediocre cards, but then their mediocre cards are great cards, right? So
Right.
so I think Macau will continue to be kind of the show that, yeah, I don't know, like is it the nationals of kind of Asia? Probably has the potential to do that, I would imagine. So it
Correct.
has the potential to be the show that everyone from Asia thinks is the biggest one. We go to that. And I think this upcoming one will be pretty good because it actually is on the same weekend that, what is it, the Nets and the Suns are doing two exhibition games in Macau.
Oh,
So I think,
really? I didn't know that.
yeah, so it's in October, and that's
Right.
I think Sands, which is kind of Venetian, where
Yes.
the Macau show is held.
Yes.
Sands Arena will have those two teams playing two exhibition games there. And if the Nets win the lottery and draft Cooper Flag,
That would
that
be the
would be a good
first one
attraction,
of the
right?
early professional games that you'll be playing, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then Suns, who knows? I guess Booker will still be there, but who knows about KD, right? But
Yeah.
I
I
think
don't know,
that
man.
that that could potentially, if you have Cooper Flag, maybe just walk through the show on a Saturday or a Sunday. That would be amazing, right?
Exactly, exactly. The thing is this, with Macau, right? It has the potential to not just be a place where deals need to be made. It's more like an exhibition, right? So I have people from
Mm.
Malaysia, flew in the Macau show last year just to get a feel of what a show is like. Not just
Yep.
about not just about doing deals, right? Of course, it's just to have a look at all the different high-end stuff, the different, like the logo mans and stuff like that, things that you don't get to see in person. So, it's a bit of a vacation slash experience, so it works out well for a large show like Macau. For them to organize, not just about shows, they have activities, they have
Yep.
they have the stage, for
Mm.
different speakers and stuff like that. So that's one thing that's they've done pretty well, for people who are interested to just enjoy the experience.
Yeah. Agreed.
Right.
And I think like along with Macau, then you started seeing more shows, right? Like Dubai had a show. I think
Yes.
Malaysia also had a show, right? And then,
We have a show in 2 weeks.
oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. But I think it's gonna be the last show that we had last year. It was
Yeah.
about 75% TCG,
Mm.
or maybe 70-30 TCG. I think this one's gonna be roughly 50-50. Yeah. So still heavy on the TCG side, but
Mm.
it's slowly. I guess when it becomes more popular, then it depends also on the number of international vendors that comes in. Like the previous one, we had a couple, one from Singapore, one from Thailand, maybe one from China. That was it. So this year, we got a couple from Philippines. So hopefully that will kind of like draw a bigger crowd for sports.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, man. Who are you collecting now? Is there somebody that's, I know we did a deal, we're gonna touch on that deal, but
Mm.
is there somebody that, you're zoning in on at the moment?
Not well, I mean, there are certain guys that I buy. I generally, in terms of what I buy, is like I like buying rare cards. Like I
Mhm.
like buying certain parallels. Like I love buying nebulas,
Yes.
one of ones in general. So I buy a lot of that. I think one of the guys that nobody really buys, I think, is Usman Jiang from
Mhm.
OKC. So
Yep.
I don't have any of his cards on with me at the moment, but I recently picked up his Nebula rookie. I also have his Immaculate Local Man. Yeah, I mean, like, there are certain guys that I collect. I guess Franz Wagner is one of them as well. And in general, I do like modern stuff a lot more. Like, I guess looking back, I should have dedicated a little bit towards kind of like vintage stuff, kind of like the Jordans as well as kind of
Right.
the Kobe's. Like Kobe's have, I think I've pretty much sold out of all my Kobe's.
Great.
I've never really had super high end ones because those are
Great.
pretty much cornered. But I think Kobe cards for this year have gone up a lot.
It's interesting on from the as far as the pricing of Kobe's, that there is no catalyst that's actually triggering the prices for Kobe cards.
Yeah.
I think that it's more of what Kobe prices are compared to where
Mm,
it's sitting versus everybody else, like the Lucas, the
right.
Shea, right? And
Yeah.
people feel, hey, Kobe shouldn't be this cheap,
Mm,
right? It should be, a bit more, and people are willing to just pay that amount.
yeah.
So, I guess that's the only reason why his cards are going up. There's no particular reason or organic reason why Kobe cards should be increasing at this moment.
Yeah. I think I've heard someone say that what this is a year of the snake, right? So because Black Mamba is a snake,
Yeah.
so this is the year why Kobe cards are doing well because it's
Right.
yeah.
I think between Kobe, LeBron, and MJ, right? So
Yeah.
it's always a conversation between these three, and you
Yeah.
see the prices. They tend to, I wouldn't say go in tandem, but they tend to, like, creep up or creep down at the same time.
Mm,
So when there is a surge in MJ's cards, okay, for
yeah.
whatever reason, okay, and it goes up,
Mhm.
let's say 20%, okay, and then here we are, people looking at the prices of Kobe cards or LeBron cards, say, I
Yeah.
think LeBron's a bit cheap now. I think that we should be buying a bit more, and then you see the price creep
Mm,
for that. And sometimes the reverse will happen, right? So like the Jordans were really, really hot sometime last year. I mean, they're still hot now, but
yeah.
they were really, really insane last year. Demand, like the moments on market, it gets scooped up. So, and because of that, people are looking at, hey, let's get the Kobe equivalent, right?
Mm,
We should be paying more for the Kobe equivalent. And that's been pushing up the Kobe prices as well.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, generally agree with that. I think these legends get priced like that, right? And then I
Yeah.
guess potentially LeBron, his autos are coming back out again with tops, right? So potentially that has a little bit of, I guess, compression on his existing autos, even though
Mhm.
they shouldn't really on kind of his,
Right.
well, at least on his rookie stuff and exquisite stuff. But I mean, they're naturally with more LeBron autos coming out after not coming out for so many years, then
Yes.
I think that naturally should, given more supply, should depress the prices of LeBron a little bit. Yeah.
Perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you're more in favor of modern, right? Is there a
Yeah.
reason, or is it because you get to watch the games, for example?
Yeah, I think I probably fall into trying to prospect too much in a way. Like it's just like yeah, it's being able to see the player kind of do well, kind of view their how they're doing as it's like you're invested in the stock of the player, right? So if
Right.
he does well, his card value will go up. So in a way it's trying to identify kind of, guys that you think that will do well. And so I think that maybe is the exciting part of it. And then I guess a big part of, not a big part, but a part of what I buy is also guys that I like, that have fallen a lot in value from their peak. Over the last year or so, I've picked up Zion. I
You
generally
think
am a Zion
that's a good
fan.
investment? Is that a good investment, Zion, at the moment?
Well, I don't think, probably not. I think given his kind of injury as well as how well the Pelicans did this year, right? It's been a write-off. But, his stuff is down so much from the peak.
Right.
And
Of
then,
course.
stuff like I'll just show you kind of the two that I picked up that I particularly enjoy. And these were cards that were picked up last year. I picked up the Black Shimmer of Zion from Prism, as well as kind of the gold vinyl rated
Oh,
rookie, right?
wow. Yep.
So, these are cards that, I still paid like a decent chunk of money for, but they're a
Yep.
fraction. They're probably 90% of what they were at the peak. So in terms of
Right.
what I paid for these prices. So why I did that, I think it's just I enjoy Zion's game in terms of when he's healthy and he's on the court. I think he's a difference maker. His game is so unique and different from kind of the era of what we're in, where it's all about 3-point shooting, right? Guys will be on a fast break and pass up open layups just to shoot a 3-pointer. But Zion's is all about kind of shooting 60% or 60% plus from just doing layups and short jumpers or
Right.
floaters. So it's just I enjoy kind of watching his game and just praying that maybe one year that he has a full bill of health for a couple years and finally realizes that potential. And these are cards that I don't know if they're investments per se, but I'm happy to hold on to them even if in the future. Yeah, just happy to have them in the PC.
I got a wild one for you. My prediction is Phoenix is going to tear the team down this
Yep.
year.
Yep.
Okay. And I have a wild prediction that I'm not sure how it will work, but I think that Zion may actually end up in Phoenix. Okay. So I think Pelicans got to make a move. Okay, I know they've been hit with a bunch of injuries, but I
Yep.
think that the Zion experiments, I think it's over in Pelicans. They need to maybe move into a bit of a different direction. So I have a funny feeling that he may end up in a team like Phoenix.
Yeah, I think well they recently changed, like Joe Dumars is there, and apparently
Right.
the rumor mill is that one of the objectives is to trade away Zion, right? So
Right.
Heat, the Miami Heat is supposedly one of the teams that are interested in Zion. So that will be interesting for if Zion goes to the Heat. I think joining kind of with that Heat culture, Pat Riley, Eric Spoelstra, maybe that will finally get his conditioning or his kind of incentive to play the game or to be the best to fulfill his potential. That will be
Well,
something that we will.
we want to see him there because people deem him as a bit lazy, but Heat
Yeah,
culture is the one that will really give a
yeah,
bit of a
yeah,
spanking to get things started, right? So I guess it in theory it does work. Just not sure how effective that would be.
yeah.
Cool. So aside from this, what other cards do you feel that's modern wise, whether you're collecting or not collecting, that's you feel that's got good potential going forward?
I think rare stuff is probably the way to go. I think we've already seen Nebulas and 101
Yes.
saw that price ramp over the recent years.
Yep.
Not too happy about it because I'm not able to pick up as many as I could or wanted to. But I think in general, you've seen the migration of kind of, at least for Prism, stuff like Nebula or Black 101s or the True Golds, their
Yep.
pricing premium versus, say, a blue that used to hold quite a lot of value,
Correct.
which still holds a
Correct.
lot of value, but
Correct.
that pricing gap is so different now than
Yes.
it was a couple years ago. So I think that there will be a continuation towards that. And then obviously on the vintage side or the collegiate side, I'm not as familiar as some guys on that. But in terms of modern stuff, I think that is kind of, at least for basketball, those rare parallels is a way to go.
Right.
I think Panini stuff, people complain about it nowadays, but I guess people really, I think these same people will be complaining about tops when they get the license, right? And then I think eventually 5, 10 years from now, people will look back at the Panini era and think fondly of it and say, I like the Nebulas, I like the Flawless Logo Man, I like, likes of kind of those, right?
Which is what they said about, the Upper Deck stuff previously, right?
Right.
Whereby
Yeah.
they'll go back and look and the 90s stuff looks so pretty compared to,
Yeah.
the rainbow color variations that's what we get today, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Like I remember, I think some of the vets were telling me kind of, oh, people used to say Exquisite, the last year of Exquisite had too many local mans, right? From Upper Deck because they were losing their license. So,
Right.
I mean, every era, people will find something to be unhappy about. But I think when you look back, like, rookie year stuff, like Panini, rookie year stuff for Luca will always be value.
Nice.
I
Okay,
think
I got
actually, let's talk back to the trade that we had. So actually,
sure.
you'll be happy to know that I brought the 3 cards. So, for your listeners that didn't know, I picked up this card in the trade with you, right?
It's a bit
To
it does a bit of a
remember.
glare, but that's a one of one select.
So that's okay. I don't know if the lighting. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Anyways,
a bit
this is
blurry.
the 101 kind of Paulo Banchero Corncross Black Disco, right?
Correct.
I kind of wanted this card mainly because I had this premier version of it, Black Disco.
Yep.
And after our trade, I was looking to complete the trio of them, and I managed to find the courtside
Courtside.
one. So I have all 3 Black Discos. And then obviously, I mentioned that you did well in the trade because you picked up the flawless Luca RPA Ruby from me, and that was pre-Laker trade. And so that's had a healthy jump because of his move to the Lakers.
Well, I'm still holding on to the card, so
Yeah.
we'll see.
I think, well, I mean, like, yeah, Lucas, I would be hoping to get back into a big Luca, but maybe in the off season, we'll see. Yeah, but I think his price.
His price are definitely on the up and up at the moment. Off season will be a good time to reevaluate the prices. In fact, most of the guys who are doing well this year, like Shea, for example, his price are definitely on the high end at the moment. Right? I don't think sustainable. So we come to a point whereby whether he wins the championship or not,
Yeah.
there'll be a dip off after that.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
with Shea, like I'm auctioning one of my better Shays with Golden. So I managed actually at the Dallas Card Show to talk to the Golden guys and get it into the Spring 100.
Yep.
Which I was deciding kind of between them and alt or other platforms. And I decided on Golden one because they said, okay, we'll put this in the Spring 100 and that will pretty much get all the marketing, bells and whistles, and all the publicity.
Right.
Yeah. So the card itself is the NT out of 3 first line parallel. So it's the jersey number 2 out of 3. It's actually got one of the best patches that I've seen on an NT card for Shea. Unfortunately, the grade is not the greatest. It's just a BGS. But the funny thing is that the 8 is that all the Force upgrades are also 8s. So I'm hoping there's a Chinese buyer that really likes the auspicious nature of the card and pays up for it.
You may be onto something on that one.
Yeah. So it's got the most number of 8s on a card that I've seen. So we'll see how it does.
What
Yeah,
do you
hopefully.
reckon that's worth? What do you reckon that's worth? I mean, just spit a number.
I think conservative, I would say that's probably 90K at the moment. And then I think blue sky-ish if he does well and they progress. And obviously the Spring 100 it hasn't even been launched and it's launched for 30 days. So hopefully they don't get bounced in the second round or the third round. If they do well and it times well with kind of their run in the playoffs, then I think, hopefully 110, 120 maybe.
Right.
I think some of his like better graded stuff are getting up there, like the BGS 9.5s of his like gold. You're seeing a lot of that stuff, like Fanatics Premier Auction has a couple big ones, right? And I think they're ending tomorrow. I think the gold, is it a PSA 10 or BGS 9.5?
I think it's a PSA 10. I think.
Yeah. I think it's
9.5,
already
I
at
think the base. I think 9.5 is just the not the base, but
the
the
99,
RPA.
right? True. Yeah. So I think the 210 is already at 80,000 before buyer's premium, right? So with a day left, and usually with these ones, they kind of the last day they ramp up a little bit. So yeah, that might be a good pricing point for it. in terms of a reference. And then I think even in the Golden Elite for April, there's a couple big ones. There's an Emerald 3 to 5. Oh, yeah.
It's a huge weekend. So we got the Fanatics premiere that's ending tomorrow morning, our
Any
time.
cards are there any cards you're going for there?
I'm in the midst of trying to complete a huge deal,
Yeah.
which I'll disclose a card later on. So I haven't really completed that deal yet. So all my attention is focused to get the deal done. And it's just so happened that we have some nice stuff, in the premiere tomorrow, which is something I really wanted was the Curry NTRPA. So
Yeah.
I worked out the math the entire week. There's no way I could reach out for that one. The timing is just a bit off. Golden's Elite this Sunday has a lot of interesting stuff in terms of where the prices are today. So again, I'm not sure how much they'll ramp up in the next 2 days, but where a lot of stuff are still pretty low at the moment. So we'll see. Yeah, but for next premiere, I think a lot of stuff are really creeping up already with about auction about less than 10 hours to go, right?
Yeah,
So,
I think 10 a.m. tomorrow is when
14
extended bidding,
14 hours
right?
to go.
Yeah. So
So
I guess we'll both be watching that.
is there any grail that you're looking out for? Tell me if there's something that's maybe a realistic target for you, and maybe something that's unrealistic that you love it but you don't think you ever get it.
I mean, back to kind of like the Grail, actually, a Zion, like I would love to get my hands on any of his rookie logo mans, like in terms of whether it's the Immaculate or the NT or the Flawless. Those could potentially be achievable given I think the hype has come off on him quite a bit, right? So I think those are ones that just for interest's sake, I'm still quite interested in. Yeah.
Right.
And then I guess unachievable ones. Nothing's unachievable in life, right? So we should always strive to just get everything.
There'll be something
No,
that's
I
gonna
mean,
be
I'm
ridiculously
sure
priced.
those
I mean, it's
like
all the money, right?
whatever
It's all-
Shine has in terms of his logo man collection. I think those are never reachable, right? So yeah.
Okay. All right. So before we wrap things up, right? So we are in the playoffs at the moment. Give me your quick playoff prediction.
It's very boring. I think OKC is going to win it. I just think that they're so dominant on the offensive side as well as the defensive side that they don't really have anyone that can challenge them in a 7-game series.
Yep.
Yeah, I know everybody's not everyone's writing them off, but people are saying that, they're inexperienced, they're youth and etc. But I just think that, what they've proved during the regular season and how deep they are, how well structured, and how well built the team is, that they will, I think they'll be able to win it all this year.
Looking at the brackets, right? Which team do you feel that is going to give them the most amount of trouble?
I think if you look at the regular season, actually, the Timberwolves give them the most trouble in terms of they are close games. So I think that will probably still play out in terms of the T-Wolves being kind of the team they may want to avoid there. Because I think Golden State, I think, was quite good. Like, let's see what happens with Butler, right? I think they're a very different team.
Some unfortunate differences.
They're a very different team without Butler, as you can see, Game 2 versus Game 1, right? So without Butler, I don't see Golden State getting too far. And then obviously Lakers, I think they've done really well. I think with Luka, kind of LeBron and Austin Reeves, right? They've taken that step. The defense is actually quite solid even without a big man. But yeah, I don't think they'll get past OKC. And then like Denver is just pretty much Jokic nowadays, right?
Yeah, I don't think I watched the game between Denver and the Clippers, both games 1 and 2. I don't think they're gonna get past LA in first round, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean Clippers is a good wild. It's a wild card. Harden, Norman Powell's playing well, and then you've got Kawhi, who's rested this whole year for this, right? So you got playoff Kawhi, which is quite different. Yeah, and like they look like they can be a wild card. Right. And then obviously, over in the East, I think it's just the top 2 seeds will figure out who is able to hit the most 3-pointers in the Eastern Conference Finals, and that will be the team that makes it, right?
No love for the Pacers.
They're incredibly deep, but I don't think they have the same firepower as the top two teams.
Right. I guess on paper I can agree with you, but I just
Yeah.
got this inkling feeling, just I'm not sure, some gut inkling feeling that the Pacers might come out on top in
Okay.
the East.
Hmm.
Okay, they won't win it. They definitely won't win it. But
Yeah.
I've just got an inkling feeling that they may come out on top. But maybe through sheer luck, or maybe
Yeah.
some buzzer beater or two or whatever. Yeah, just got that feeling for them this year.
Well, yeah. Well, I think they've lit the fire, right? I think Halliburton just got voted by his peers as the most overrated player in the NBA.
That's right.
So maybe that will kind of light the fire in him to get them to the finals.
Right. I mean, Halliburton's one of those few players that really burned me in the towards the end of last year. Actually, end of last year, early this year. Like his cards really just went free fall. Right.
Yeah.
And that's after he went to the Olympics, although he didn't play. But that was just mind-boggling to see his cards really took a dive. When the moment the season started.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, man. Was there anything else would you like to share with the audience before we wrap things up?
No, I mean, it's been a good conversation. Hopefully it'll be of an interest to your listeners. And happy to catch up again in person in June when you come to the Hong Kong show, right?
Yes, I'm gonna try and make it, but I'm definitely, if there was one in December or the one in end of the year, I'm definitely going for that. Or maybe Macau. So I assume you're gonna go for Macau one.
Yeah, we'll go for Macau because it's a short trip for me. I think it's worth it. Like if with the exhibition games and stuff.
If it's confirmed, I mean, I guess it's confirmed, right? Exhibition game.
Yep, it's confirmed. Same weekend.
Maybe we should go to and watch the game, man.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely gonna get tickets. So yeah.
Right. I'll hit you up for that one. Let me discuss with my home minister first.
Yeah, it's important. I think that's the.
All right. Cool, man. Thanks, Eric. Thanks for taking the time, and I will hope to meet you guys again. Thanks for watching, guys. This is the Sports Card Podcast. Till the next one, Cowboys out.